experience a new class of data analytics. I'm Brenda Sue. I'm a product marketing manager at Microsoft, and I lead the global marketing strategy for a portfolio of products within data, AI, mixed reality, and IoT. I'll be your moderator today, and I'll also be answering your questions via chat, along with a few others not on the screen. And it's my pleasure to introduce Shannon Lindsay, Senior Content Developer at Microsoft. Shannon works with the data and AI team to create learning materials for learners all over the globe. Her focus is on the data analyst role-based portfolio, and she's passionate about Power BI and all things Azure. Coming from a health analytics background, she believes that non-traditional paths into tech are really changing the field. And today, she will break this product down into smaller, digestible pieces and share how this technology is within reach for all of us. All right, take it away, Shannon.
Thank you so much, Brenda. I also really want to thank the production team and the experts behind the scenes working hard to answer all of your questions. With that being said, please do ask your questions as they arise. We have Rosemary, Varsha, and Chris standing by to answer them, and we want to make sure that you get your questions answered today. In just 30 minutes, we are going to talk about what Azure Synapse Analytics is, survey the components of Azure Synapse Studio, and take a quick tour through my workspace in Azure Synapse Studio. We'll then wrap up with Q&A at the end, all of course, time permitting. 30 minutes seems pretty short to go through such a robust product. As we go through the platform, I do want to have all of us keep in mind that Azure Synapse Analytics is designed for the masses. It's designed for data analysts, data engineers, and data scientists alike. So it's my hope that you understand which of these roles you fit into and how this product can enhance your analytic capabilities and enable you to work together with your data team to use big data. So we're going to start by going over what Azure Synapse Analytics is as a platform, just to make sure we're all on the same page. And then we're going to take a tour through Azure Synapse Analytics Studio. So Azure Synapse Analytics is an integrated data analytics platform. So it combines data warehousing, big data analytics, data integration, and visualization into a single environment. Azure Synapse Analytics empowers users of all abilities to gain access and quick insights across all of your data, enabling a whole new level of performance and scale. I like to say that it's a low barrier to entry. Anyone can jump in there, navigate around, and eventually figure out what it is that you need to do with your data. So there are quite a few components available inside of Azure Synapse Analytics, and we're going to talk through these one by one. So analytic capabilities are offered through Synapse SQL through either dedicated SQL pools or serverless SQL pools. So this is where your analysts are going to work. This is your descriptive analytics. You're working on, what's happening in my data, which would be typically answered through a data warehouse. One just important distinction between the dedicated SQL pools and the serverless SQL pools is that your dedicated SQL pool is what stores the data warehouses that you may have been used to in the past. So from an analyst perspective, if you have used Power BI to access a data warehouse, that's stored in a dedicated SQL pool. We can also use the always-on serverless SQL pool, which is designed for bursting workloads. So every Azure Synapse Analytics workspace comes with a serverless SQL pool. So you can use those endpoints to query data in the data lake using a familiar T-SQL query syntax. That's the really nice part. You can just use SQL, and I'm going to show that to you in the demo. So this distributed data processing system is built for large-scale data, and it allows you to analyze big data quickly. Another thing that I particularly like is that there's no infrastructure to set up or clusters to maintain. Synapse Spark is one of Microsoft's implementations of Apache Spark in the cloud, with full support for Scala, Python, Spark SQL, and C#. And this is for your data engineers. So if the data is too big for data analysts to handle, You can use your Apache Spark pools, which opens up this technology to data scientists as well. And this is where you may see your predictive analytics. So, you know, what might happen in the future based on previous trends or patterns. We then come to our data integration and orchestration, where you're going to integrate your data and operationalize all of your code development with Synapse pipelines. Data engineers also deal with the integration and orchestration of these pipelines. So if you're familiar with Azure Data Factory, Synapse pipelines use the same code base. We can also perform operational analytics with near real-time hybrid transactional and analytical processing with Azure Synapse Link. So this is really neat. This is your operational analytics, so where you're deriving insights and actions in near real time to influence a decision. So this near real-time analysis fully supports Azure Cosmos DB today. And an example of that, if you're familiar, may be using the SQL API of Cosmos DB. So this is your prescriptive analytics. So it's your predictive analytics that's based on real-time data. So I think the example that's easiest to think of is like your basket analysis. We are then going to use Synapse Studio to access all of these capabilities through a single web UI. So Synapse Studio can be used by all of us. And within Synapse Studio, you are going to explore your data and eventually make sense of your data, and you can present that out with Power BI. So Azure Synapse Analytics is your one-stop shop for all of your analytic needs. Let's have a closer look at Azure Synapse Studio, which is our web native experience. It brings everything together in regards to building analytical solutions end to end. It's truly one place to do every task. Within Synapse Studio, we have the ability to write code, author data pipelines, and even author Power BI reports. So what does Synapse Studio look like? The way that Azure Synapse Studio works is that it's divided into activity hubs. So you may notice this has a similar look and feel to Azure Data Factory. It's one location to do all the tasks that you need to build an entire solution. And when I say all tasks, I mean ingest data, explore your data, do your data prep, orchestration pipelines, and then of course the end result, which is to visualize. All right, so let's make this a little bit less abstract and show you how it works. We're going to jump right into our Synapse Analytics workspace. So this is Synapse Studio. Where we have landed is in the Home Hub, which provides shortcuts to the common features that you're going to use in Azure Synapse Analytics, as well as useful links. So you can see here, we've got recent resources. You have shortcuts to ingest your data, explore, and visualize using Power BI. And then, of course, you can create new resources right here. The first place that you're going to want to start, if you're getting started here, is in the Data Activity Hub. The way that Azure Synapse Studio is set up is that you've got your navigation pane on the left-hand side, and then when you start working with your resources, you'll see those in the designer in the center of the screen. So the Data Hub is where you access your provisioned SQL pool databases and SQL serverless databases in the workspace. So here we are, okay? You're also going to access your linked resources here, such as storage accounts and other linked services. Your workspace lists out the databases that exist within the actual workspace itself. So these are your tables, views, stored procedures, functions. If you're familiar with working in SQL Server Management Studio, this should look very familiar to you. Your linked resources refer to the resources that live outside of the workspace. So a good example here is storage accounts, of which we have 2. We have both our Azure Blob Storage along with our Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. And if you click through the folder structure, you'll be able to dig in and view or query the data in your data lake. So here you can see we actually are going to query a Parquet file. So I am going to just right-click and take a look at what is in this Parquet file. Now, this is, like the low code, no code environment, just a couple of clicks to get you started exploring your data. So it is as easy as that to query your data lake storage. So it really just makes things easier. Now, when we go back to run a query within our SQL pool, let's do the same thing. We're going to run a SQL script. And we're going to take a look here at the top 100 rows within our SQL pool. As you work through the resources, you will see that these new tabs are created up at the top. You have the ability to, within the properties, you can rename things, you can save things, and then of course, when you're ready, you can publish them. There is a lot of flexibility with regards to browsing your data here in Synapse Studio. So the Data tab is your first step in exploring these analytical pools. Apart from generating scripts in the data area, as we've just demonstrated, we can also use the Develop Hub to work with 4 core areas. So here we can generate SQL scripts, notebooks, data flows, and then the last piece of the puzzle here where we're going to actually use our data, your Power BI. If we expand the SQL scripts, what you can see here is a number of SQL scripts that we can make use of. You can connect the SQL script to an available SQL pool, and you have the option to use either the built-in SQL pool or the dedicated SQL pool. So here we can view query plans and execute the queries. So as I click through each of these areas, you'll see, we've got the tabs appearing at the top. So this helps you keep track of what you're doing, what you're working on. And then notice you have this option up here to publish. So the Develop Hub here really allows you to centralize all of your analytics in a single place. So from exploratory analysis with SQL scripts to integration with PySpark, building of mapping data flows for automated orchestration of data, right through to visualizing data in Power BI. Now, we are going to come back to this Power BI piece at the end. We're going to continue going through the different hubs, and then we'll come back and take a look at the linked Power BI workspace and see how this data that we're querying can actually be put into a Power BI report for use. So we are going to jump over and move into the Integrate hub. And this is where you are going to manage your orchestration pipelines. So you'll see here that you get a designer that is essentially the same as Azure Data Factory. So I'm not going to talk through all of the available activities in here, but note that you can create pipelines by clicking and dragging them onto the canvas here. So let's say that we're going to create a machine learning pipeline. It is simple, and then you're going to configure everything right here in the console. So what I want to point out is that there are a really wide range of tools available in here. So from the Integrate Hub, we have 2 final areas that are really useful when it comes to provisioning and operationalization, say that 10 times fast, operationalization of the actual solutions that you build. So let's take a look here at the Monitor Hub. Within the Monitor Activity Hub, it's broken into 3 areas. So we have our integration, our activities, and our analytics pools. We're going to use the Monitor Hub to view active pipeline and trigger runs, integration runtime status, any Apache Spark jobs, SQL requests and data flow debug activities. We don't have any running here now. But just essentially, if you want to see the status of a job or an activity, the Monitor Activity Hub is where you want to go. It's a really useful area for keeping an eye on the activities that are occurring across the Azure Synapse Analytics data estate. So this is your high-level view of everything that's going on. All right, so moving down through the activity hubs, we're now going to jump into the Manage Activity Hub. So the Manage Activity Hub is where you can keep an eye on your analytical pools, external connections, integration, security, and source control. So the Manage Hub enables you to perform some of the same actions that you can perform within the Azure portal, like managing SQL and Spark pools, but there is also a lot more that you can do in this hub that you can't do anywhere else, such as managing linked services. Looking at our linked services, we actually have the ability to change the connections. So there's a lot that you can do here in this Manage hub. All right, so we've now gone through each of the items in Synapse Studio, and now we're going to bring this all back together. So what we're going to do now is use the data that we've pulled together so that we're actually creating actionable insights, making sure that this data is accessible and useful to the people that are making decisions. So I'm going to jump back into the Develop tab. And what I'm going to do here, pardon me, the Develop Hub, what I'm going to do here is I just want to show you all that you have access to a linked Power BI workspace. And the way that this works, these are linked. So if I click refresh here, it's going to refresh with the workspace in Power BI. So essentially, it's a pretty simple process. You set up your Power BI workspace, you then make that connection, and you have access to your data. So right within Synapse Studio, this is the real beauty. Everything is under one pane of glass. So within Synapse Studio, you can look at your Power BI reports that are based off of the data that you are managing here in Synapse Studio. So here we've got just a quick Power BI report that we've pulled together, and we're looking again at this New York City taxi data, but you can do everything here that you can do the same actions here that you can do in the Power BI service when it comes to report design. You can then save your report and you can navigate away. That will then be subsequently saved in that linked Power BI workspace. So I'm going to jump just back to the Home tab here. That was a whirlwind tour through Synapse Studio. And the real key here is that within this workspace, your analysts and your data engineers and your data scientists all have the opportunity to work together on the same resources. So this is, working together, collaboration within Synapse Studio. You have everything in one place. It's pretty easy to navigate around. And this brings me to the next piece of the puzzle, which is how do you get started? We're going to come back to Q&A. But the main thing that I wanted to point out here is if you want to do this on your own and you want to follow along with just going through Synapse Studio, just as we've just done all together, you can go to aka.ms/mslearn ASALP1, and that will take you to this specific specific learning path that we just covered here today. So with that whirlwind tour that was very quick, I am actually going to turn it back over to Brenda to take us through some Q&A.
Awesome, thanks, Shannon. We have a lot of great questions that came in the past 20, 30 minutes. There are a few that came up a few times, and we're gonna address those to the public right now. First one is, this is a really cool product, but how do I even get started in this space?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is a cool product. There is a lot that you can do within Synapse Studio, and I think truly the best place to learn is within Microsoft Learn. So one thing that I want to point out, if you navigate to Microsoft Learn, you have the ability to filter by product, by role, or by type. So if, for example, we are interested in looking at the data engineer modules, and we want to look at Synapse Analytics, here you can see here we have all 36 modules in one place. And if we wanted to make sure that, you know, we're tackling these learning paths in a way that makes sense, you can see here that each learning path has modules within it that you can go through in order to make sure that you're learning these things in a way that makes sense to you.
Awesome, thanks, Shannon. Second great question we got. My IT department won't let me create a resource group in Azure Portal. So how else can I get hands-on experience with this product?
This is a great question. Lots of us work for larger companies or smaller companies, but we don't necessarily have that level of access in the Azure portal to start building. So what I would recommend in this case is actually to take a look at the Microsoft 365 developer program. If you do not have permissions to spin up a resource group, if you join the Microsoft 365 developer program, what this will enable you to do is that you can get a Microsoft 365 E5 license to use for development purposes. So you can actually use this account for your learning. There are restrictions, and as you go through to sign up, you will see exactly what is and is not allowed using this account. But for anyone that is exploring any of the new technologies that we've seen here at Ignite, I would really recommend taking a look at this developer program so that you have the capability to create these resource groups and to be able to use this technology that you've learned about today.
Awesome. Next on the list, after I learn this module, what do I do next and how can I continue learning?
So how can you continue your learning? Again, I'm going to just navigate right back to our learning path. This is the nice thing about the learning paths on Learn. I'm not sure how many people have had a chance to go through these, but they really take you through step by step what it is that you need to know to be able to use the products. And what you'll see is that a lot of these learning paths lead towards your Microsoft certifications. So anyone who is interested in becoming Microsoft certified, you can come right in here into Learn and you can take a look at some of the certifications. So I'm going to browse certifications here. And I am going to go ahead and filter by data engineer. And here you can see a list of all of those certifications that you are able to access. And I'm not sure if folks have participated yet in the Cloud Skills Challenge that's being offered this week, or this month rather, but I would really recommend that you guys take a look at that and take advantage of some of those free exams that are offered for going through the materials on Learn.
Awesome. Another question we have is, I love what you covered today, and this was all extremely helpful, but it was a little out of range for me. I'm more of a beginner. How do you recommend getting started? Is there a fundamentals?
Yes, the best place to get started is with the fundamentals certifications. So our moderators will drop the links to those fundamental certifications in the chat, and we really recommend that you take a look at the learning paths. Again, I'm sorry, I sound like a broken record. I keep going back to those learning paths, but that is going to be your self-paced learning. It's really designed for you to be able to succeed and for you to be able to practice what you have learned as you go along. So you'll find within the learning paths that there are review questions, so there are knowledge checks, there are labs that you can do, and everything really is a nice guided walkthrough. So I would recommend check out the learning paths that lead to those data fundamentals exams.
Awesome. Next question on the list. How much does it cost to get started with this product, and does that cost cover these learning paths?
Well, you can actually get started completely for free. So what I really want to stress as we're using all of these shiny new products that are coming out is that there is no charge to learn. And that's really the beauty behind Microsoft Learn and behind, using a developer account to get started. So if this is something that you want to do on your own, you do not have to go through your company M365 tenant. You can sign up for that developer account. You can get started completely for free. No cost. You don't have to put in a credit card number. It's all free.
Awesome, thank you. And the last question we have is probably one of my favorite questions. As someone in this space on the daily and someone creating content for this space constantly, what do you like best about Azure Synapse Analytics?
This is a really difficult question because there is so much that you can do inside Synapse Analytics. I mean, the opportunities are almost endless. But for me, with my background as an analyst, I think hands down, the ability to have a linked Power BI workspace and to be able to use Power BI inside of Azure Synapse Analytics, and also to be able to distribute those reports through the regular routes using Power BI is really incredible. With Power BI and Azure Synapse Analytics, using direct query, you can take advantage of the performance of Azure Synapse Analytics without any limits on concurrency. And you can work with just very, very big data, and it is performant in Power BI. So I always go back to that last piece. I go back to where I'm comfortable, and that is my Power BI making all of this big data useful for our decision makers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon. That was extremely helpful. And we all had a great time hearing how passionate you are, and really appreciate you guiding us through the product. That is all the questions we have today.
Thank you so much, Brenda, and thank you all for spending your time with us here at Ignite.